Great if it was true. Unfortunately, the scientific community doesn't agree, as I found out when I spoke to Brenda Eckwurzel of the Union of Concerned Scientists.
Overwhelming vast majority, absolutely. Most of the scientific societies around the world, National Academies of Sciences, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, all the leading experts of the world that get together and make scientific statements about climate change, they all agree that climate change is real, it's unequivocal, and they're very worried about the lack of action on the parts of weaning ourselves off of fossil fuel.
These guys have been able to delay action on climate change for 2 decades, all along making billions and billions of dollars in dirty energy.
According to PR man and author Jim Hogan, the success of this echo chamber has nothing to do with science and everything to do with spin.
It was a media campaign. They wanted to create doubt in the minds of journalists. They wanted to create doubt in the minds of the public. And your average person will never know. They just see some articulate guy, may even be a scientist, basically being shills for industry. People like Fred Singer, he was a guy who worked for tobacco, now works on climate change. But because they're wearing a lab coat and they have a PhD, people believe them.
I tracked down Singer in Washington, D.C., where he was briefing Senate staffers on the scientific reasons why they shouldn't support the cap-and-trade bill.
That suggests that after 1998 there's further warming. That's not correct. There's been cooling since 1998, everyone agrees.
The function of this denial machine is to then disseminate the quasi-science of people like Dr. Singer.
The science is not finished, the debate is not over, as the left who support this legislation would tell you.
I think global warming is a complete hoax. It's been actually getting cooler for the past 10 years.
Some suggest that the research has been manipulated and that those questioning the effects of climate change have been silenced. Myron Ebell is Director of Energy and Global Warming Policy for the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
Then there's the role of the conservative media establishment, epitomised by the nation's most watched news network, Fox News. 24 hours a day, they pump out pro-business, pro-Republican talking points. Take these 2 emails sent to Fox staff in late 2009. The first directed all reporters to say that global warming theories are based upon data that critics have called into question, while another instructed them to echo the insurance industry language by using the words government-run health insurance to describe the proposed healthcare reforms.
Government-run healthcare may include some rationing.
A government healthcare takeover could drastically change the way you and your family receive healthcare.
The Tea Party also owes a lot to Fox, who urged its legion of loyal fans to get involved.
It's a movement that is sweeping the nation all across the country.
Hundreds of these protests across the country and may involve millions of people.
Bam! Fox News is out in front of this.
Well, you can join the Tea Party action from your home if you go to thefoxnation.com.
The Tea Party revolution.
There's probably one right by you.
We have a map to show you just how widespread these are.
These are people who demand to be heard.
Americans are making their voices heard as they fight for their future. Total, fair, and balanced network coverage.
Fox News. They report, we decide.
So Fox News is
unbiased.
They give you 2 sides to the story.
They give you both sides. They don't manufacture news.
I can point to every one of these organizations and give you specific examples where they either lied to me, or disingenuous, or called me names.
Right.
Okay? They don't tell the whole story. They tell one side of the story. We see that now, and we're speaking out.
But if there's one person at Fox who's become the darling of the Tea Party movement, it's Glenn Beck. Watching Beck's paranoid populism and race baiting goes a long way to explaining some of the more extreme views in the Tea Party movement.
The media either can't see it, or they're complicit, or just wildly out of touch. I don't know which it is, but let me show you the big picture of what's happening here. The roots of the tree of radicalism and revolution.
This president, I think, has exposed himself as a guy over and over and over again who has a deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture. I don't know what it is. This guy is, I believe, a racist.
Barack Obama and the left wing of the Democratic Party reek of fascism, socialism, whatever you want to call it. It is totalitarianism and indoctrination, and we can't allow it to happen. If it wasn't for Fox News and the Wall Street Journal and people like me at a local level, you wouldn't get the truth.
With 9 million people tuning into his TV and radio shows each day, Beck's obsession with communism also makes him a powerful ally to oppose things like the Cap and Trade Bill.
Let's bring in Phil Kerpen. He is the Director for Policy for Americans for Prosperity. You like watermelon? I think this is a watermelon bill. You know,
I think you're exactly right. This bill is green on the outside, the thinnest green on the outside, and inside it's deep communist red.
This was especially evident when AFP's Phil Kerpen fed a story to Beck that Obama's Green Jobs advisor was a commie.
This is the beginning. This is the portal into all of this. This is the biggest story in history. Self-avowed communist activities. There are communist, Marxist, revolutionaries all around this president. These guys are Marxists in the White House.
I have listed here some potential methods of communist takeover in the United States by internal subversion. One is the infiltration of high offices of government and political parties until the President of the United States is a communist, unknown to the rest of us, of course.
That voice from the past is Fred Koch, author, oil millionaire, member of the radical anti-communist John Birch Society, and father of Charles and David. While the threat of communism has long since passed, it's striking how effective it still remains to instantly demonise opponents, as evidenced in the descriptions of the climate and healthcare policies, and right throughout the Tea Parties. Why had the anti-Obama spin doctors resorted to the language of the Cold War propaganda days? And why has it been so effective in causing hysteria among Tea Party goers? Curious, I went to see Mark Crispin Miller, NYU professor and corporate propaganda expert.
There are certain techniques that propagandists really need to use, and they're so basic that, you know, they will either seem inarguable to us or we've never even noticed them. But one thing that one must do, of course, is cloak one's message in a kind of moral righteousness. You know, we believe in liberty, we believe in free enterprise. We hear that all the time. Well, that basically means crony capitalism, but it implies something that most Americans will, you know, feel a surge of positive emotion about, right? Now, there is a tacit opposition there between free enterprise and communism, and that's the other technique that has to be used. You've also got to have enemies, demons, that serve as scapegoats, and against which you can vent all the angry feelings that the propaganda will also incite. For them, socialism conjures up a sort of weird melange of boogeymen. Obama's associated with that by the right wing, for example. He's also associated with Muslims. You know, there's this myth that he's a Muslim and so on. He's also black. So all these things serve for a highly volatile and irrational minority of the American population in a way that's just kind of classic propaganda. And it's no accident that this serves the interest of the health insurance companies, the big pharmaceutical cartel, you know, the petrochemical interests. I mean, we could go on and on. It suits them fine. This is why they've basically encouraged this. And this is why they like people like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh, who are the tribunes of this movement.
Understanding a bit more about how propaganda works, I went to examine its use as FreedomWorks hosted the first ever National Tea Party in Washington, D.C.
We just fear the government takeover of all the businesses. We fear the government takeover of our liberty. We feel like we're losing the Constitution, and we have sat at home and not said anything, but not believed in what was going on, and finally we have gotten up off the couch and come to do something, and we're not going to stop now.
American made, American made. $2. $2 here, $2, $2. Hey,
We certainly got the feathers, we just need the tar. Socialism has just taken over. It's got its grips on it. It always leads to communism.
Tell us about your sign.
Well, we're against socialism in America. We stand for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We want our freedom. Freedom!
Yeah, we came out here today for freedom. That is exactly right. This is Christine. She can talk too. Go ahead.
Well, he said it all. They're trying to push socialism in this country and take our freedoms away. We're not standing for it.
We want our country back. Get rid of all this trash that they're bringing down on us.
Mr. President, here we are! We do not want government-run health care. Americans want government out of our lives.
While the lineup of passionate Tea Party organisers get the 100,000 patriots going, eventually the sponsors from libertarian groups take to the stage to preach the gospel of free markets.
Let me hear an amen. Now that sound is proof that hell hath no fury like a taxpayer ignored. I am the grassroots director for Freedom Works. We're an organization that believes in lower taxes, less government, and more freedom. You can't be for freedom if you are for more power for the government. Government power is the enemy of freedom. We fight against the tyrannies of government. And that's why we're here today, because something radically has changed in the last few months.
This is nothing less than an intellectual battle for the heart and soul of America.
It was just like those old campaigns against tobacco regulation. The groups weren't selling free markets, they were selling freedom itself. And the Tea Party Americans were buying it.
We came out here today for freedom.
Freedom! Freedom!
Freedom works! Freedom works!
We go out and get Americans from all walks of life involved to defend their economic freedom.
More importantly than the cost, our freedoms.
Having successfully steered protesters to revolt against the entire Obama agenda in the name of freedom, Phase 2 was to succeed where the Kochs had failed in 1980. To build a free market movement capable of staging a revolution at the ballot box. To find out more, I went undercover as a budding fiscal conservative. My first stop was a training session for Tea Partiers held by the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
What is the theme to the Tea Party? What is the Tea Party about? Is it about just opposing this and opposing that and opposing this? Or is there an integrated theme? And that idea I submit to you, and the idea I want to sell you on today, is the idea of the rights of man. The basic issue at stake is the destruction of the rights of those who produce in the United States.
And the Tea Parties, of course, are the battlegrounds we're in today. We are today's peasant army. We are the thin line between freedom and the statist dystopia they want to create. Freedom is a wonderful thing to fight for. It's time for us to join that army, and that's something I hope we all are dedicated to.
In Nashville, I met up with a collection of libertarian groups crossing the country teaching guerrilla internet tactics for free market ideals.
Over 200 years ago, guys, a group of people just like you did something extraordinary. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. They were activists, just like you. I truly believe that. They were activists then. We are activists now. Make no distinction about it. So what do? We become digital activists. We identify the medium, we learn the medium, we manipulate the medium. It was printing presses then, it's the internet now. That's where we influence the hearts and minds of our fellow citizens. The Tea Party's got us running up the hills. American majority is trying to give you the tools, the muskets, right? So, here's what I do. I get on Amazon, I type in liberal books. I go through and I say 1 star, 1 star, 1 star. The flip side is you need to go to a conservative, libertarian, whatever, go to their products and give them 5 stars. Okay? So literally, 80% of the books I put a star on, I don't read. So that's how it works, okay? There's places, this is where your kids, I promise you, this is where your kids are getting information. Rotten Tomatoes, Flickster, those are places where you can rate movies, okay? So when you type in movies on healthcare or documentaries on healthcare, I don't want Sicko to come up, I don't want Michael Moore's to come up, so I always give it bad ratings. I spend about 30 minutes a day, so that's guerrilla tactics. If there's a place to comment, a place to rate, right, a place to share information, you have to do it. That's how you control the online dialogue. Give our ideals a fighting chance.
The principles that I believe strongly in, that the founders believed strongly in, were the idea of individual liberty, rule of law, limited government, the free market system. There are correlations. Free market, religious, and personal freedom. We lose the free market, we will lose personal religious freedom. That's why we fight for it.
It's the end of the session, and suddenly we're all asked to introduce ourselves to the group. I've thrust my camera phone into the hand of the lady sitting next to me, and I'm just praying I don't blow my cover.
I was at the 912, I've been to the Louisville Tea Party Express, I've been to lots of different grassroots movements and events, and just to say that you guys are amazing and bring on the second revolution.
Are you ready to join the Second American Revolution?
The radical capitalist revolution was underway. The Tea Party establishment officially adopted the mantra of free markets. It was a stunning comeback for an ideology that seemingly lay in ruins after the mortgage crisis barely 1 year earlier, the symbol of which was Federal Reserve Chairman and champion of free markets Alan Greenspan, all but admitting that deregulation doesn't work.
You had an ideology that free competitive markets are by far the unrivaled way to organize economies. You found a flaw in the reality.
A flaw in the model that I perceived is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology was not right. It was not working.
Precisely.
Tea Party-backed Republican candidates emerged all over the country to contest the 2010 elections, promising to stop the energy tax, repeal healthcare, and reduce the size of government. While the Kochs chipped in to support some 24 Tea Party candidates, as usual, their real contribution was behind the scenes. In June, at this resort in Aspen, Colorado, they hosted a secret strategy session with a network of ultra-wealthy donors and powerful allies, including Glenn Beck. According to this letter from Charles Koch, at the June meeting, participants committed to an unprecedented level of support. Soon after, Americans for Prosperity announced plans to spend a staggering $45 million on the election. They ran ads attacking politicians for supporting the Obama agenda. Obama tried to hit back, accusing AFP of being a corporate front in more than a dozen speeches.
But if you're in a battleground state right now, you are being bombarded with negative ads every single day, and nobody knows who's paying for these ads. They've got these names like Americans for Prosperity.
Meanwhile, in a test case known as Citizens United, the Supreme Court, which included 2 judges who had attended secret Koch meetings, ruled that corporations were free to anonymously invest as much as they wanted in front groups like AFP. Republican operatives seized upon the decision, creating new groups and flooding the airwaves with tens of millions of dollars in ads for unknown donors. On the grassroots side, AFP dusted off their buses, launching their November is Coming campaign. AFP and FreedomWorks also use their considerable budgets to train and mobilise the Tea Party army.
Identify your voters. Get them registered to vote. Bring them out to vote. That's it.
The Tea Party was ready to strike.
Because this is our last stand. This is our last stand to let the president know. We're out here on the corner in North Philadelphia. We're down also in the city of Philadelphia. We have a fully operational phone bank that's been opened 9 this morning through Americans for Prosperity. We've been running that all day. We have our people out there door knocking, and we're standing here now, and here's what we're going to say. We don't like the way you view us. We don't like your view of America. We don't like your policies, and we're taking it back on November 2nd. And we're
So this morning, it is being called a GOP sweep and a Tea Party tidal wave.
In the biggest wipeout for either party since 1948.
The new 112th Congress will feature 40 Tea Party members.
A lot of libertarian-leaning individuals within that Tea Party movement, especially when it comes to taxes and over-regulations.
Stand up to this agenda that is taking us in the wrong direction.
It's a message of limited constitutional government.
In the threats of the excessive government regulation, the huge out-of-control role that Washington has begun to play.
There's a new day now. The Republicans took control of the House in November 2010. Very anti-government agenda, in fact. One of their agenda items is to, take out full government agencies like the Department of Education, Department of Energy, EPA. When you have politicians elected who want to shut down the government, it sets a pretty interesting tone for the debate.
For me, this newfound zeal for the Koch's radical free market ideology is the real revolution of the Tea Party movement. It has nothing to do with people in ye-old costumes, or waving flags, or holding protest events. But it is a revolution that has everything to do with hidden corporate agendas, complicit media players, seasoned propagandists, a highly coordinated network of free market groups, and most of all, a pair of brothers with a dream to create a privatised America.
The American dream of free enterprise, capitalism, is alive and well.
And so what does the American dream mean for you?
American dream to me is one word: freedom.
Defending the American dream means defending our rights and our freedoms and our liberties that have made this country great.
To me, the American dream is to live in peace and prosperity and freedom. And government under socialism is not a government of freedom.
What about the freedom of individuals to make up their own mind through reason and rational debate? What about the freedom to trust that grassroots movements are just that, and not tools of the wealthy? And what does the scale on which this has happened say about the state of American democracy?
I think it's a serious threat to our democracy, and I think people are mostly unaware of it, if not completely unaware of the threat. They're very much unaware of the front groups, unaware of how their thoughts are being manipulated and how their actions are actually being manipulated in many cases. I think they're unaware that we, to a large extent, have a plutocracy in this country, or at least an emerging one, rather than democracy. And I think that's because of the rise of power and influence of corporations and the way that they've been able to use PR and PR tactics and propaganda to get what they want.
We are drowning in propaganda, drowning in it. And I'm not speaking figuratively. I think it's threatening our lives. It's cutting off our air. It's making real democracy all but impossible. It has brought the planet to the point of ecological destruction. It's had no positive consequences whatsoever because it doesn't serve the people. It serves other interests.
I've come to believe more and more as I've been studying this problem that the real currency in democracy is honest information. That if you are on a mass scale able to pump out false information, then the whole democratic system kind of breaks up. And yet these people have a perfect right to do it and hide their involvement in it.
And now you have very motivated people out across the country who are activists, who are willing to fight for what they think is rights for themselves, but in fact is forwarding a corporate agenda that is to stop regulations and to stop taxes. And they're not going to stop in 2010. They will continue through to the 2012 elections.
As the Tea Partiers march on to 2012 and their goal of taking out President Obama and installing politicians who will fight for the right of free markets, my only message to them is to be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.